Welcome, everybody. So good to see you all here. This is the Northwest Territories Association Continuing Education Winter Webinar Series. And if you don't know me, my name is Bronwyn, and I'm an architect that is on the Con Ed committee. So we're really fortunate today to begin the series with two architects all the way from the Netherlands and the UK. And they're going to share with us a really exciting, original, and empowering method of doing housing construction, the Wiki House. So I'm very thrilled to tell you about our two presenters. I'll start with Ivar Dickerhof. So he has a background in urban renewal, property development, innovation in the building industry, and co-housing. And his works and interests lie in revitalization of cities in social, physical, and economic terms. So he's currently working for the Woningbouw Atelier, which means housing studio. And it is a living laboratory, and it brings together new concepts, knowledge, and the experience of innovative parties in housing and uses experiments to pursue innovation. So it's innovation by doing, and the steps to actual realization is what distinguishes it from other innovation labs. And one of the exciting projects that Ivar is working on is the Wiki House experiment. And then we have Vincent Muller, and he's the founder of Antwerp Muller, an architecture firm that specializes in small-scale residential and urban design. The firm also focuses on sustainability, but in a much broader perspective than just clean energy or ecological materials. So in addition, they also focus on making sure that the space is used as optimally as possible. Vincent is also the co-founder of Wiki House Netherlands, and he's fascinated with open source and self-construction and has been instrumental in exploring the new possibilities technology brings us, being able to share everything via the internet and 3D printing. So combining this with low-tech solutions in construction makes it easier to assemble for everybody. And this gives unlimited possibilities for people to take control and design and build themselves. So, gentlemen, over to you, and thank you again for your time today. We're so happy to have you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Bronwyn, for that amazing introduction. And thank you very much for the invitation. And we're really happy to tell you more about the project, the Wikihouse project that we're doing in Holland. I'm going to share a presentation with you guys and take you through the project that we're doing. You should be able to see my presentation right now. If not, just tell Bronwyn or her colleague in the chat, and we'll try to solve it. First of all, I'm not on my own here today because all of you guys are there, of course, which is amazing. And I understand that people are joining this webinar from all over the world. But also, I would like to introduce Vincent. He's already been introduced, but we've been working together for about 5 years now on the Wiki House project that we're doing. First of all, I would like to tell you a bit more about the Woningbouw Atelier. After that, I will talk about why we're doing the Wiki House project, the Wiki House experiment, what it is exactly, what is Wiki House, and what we're doing in Almere, where we are building right now, but also in Holland. If you have any questions during the presentation, just write them down in the chat, and we'll try to answer them at the end. And Bronwyn will moderate it a bit. I think the presentation will take about 20 minutes, and I will give a sort of overview of what we've done and what we're doing and why we are doing it. And then there's room for questions, and Vincent will help to answer that questions, especially if they're a bit more technical. Um, First of all, at Woningbouw Atelier, why are we there? Well, we're there to propel innovation by doing experiments in a living lab. So we not only talk about innovation, but we actually do it. And if that leads to something that's successful, we'll try to scale it up too. On the right hand side, you see the organizations which are involved, which is the Council of Almere, quite close to Amsterdam, but also the ministries and other organizations. Why have we started the Wiki House experiment? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, there is a big demand for affordable housing in Almere, but also in Holland, in Europe, and I think worldwide. Actually, it's an issue. In the same time, we see that there's a demand specifically for small households. The amount of people per house are um, coming down, so the houses actually need to be smaller and smaller. Um, Third, sustainability. I mean, that's not a new subject, but still needs quite a lot of attention, especially if it's about house building. There's two sides to that. One, the energy efficiency of the house itself that you're building, but also the amount of CO2 you embody in the house that you're building. Um, Fourth is the digitization and the industrialization that's happening right now in the building industry. That's going on in Holland. That's going on in UK, in Europe. I'm sure in Canada and America too. And I think this is a worldwide phenomenon too. Um, and then a bit more related to Almere, but Almere has quite a rich history in self-building and giving people that are going to live in the houses quite a lot of influence in what that house is going to look like, but also how the environment of that house is going to look like. So this was a very logical next step in the tradition that Almere already had. On the right hand side, you see a book written by John Turner called Housing by People, written in the 60s, I think. And it's about the development of slums, actually, and how they could evolve in a very positive way by giving the autonomy to the people that actually live there. And so it states, and I think that's very key for what we're doing right now too. It states that if you give the people that actually live in a neighborhood or are going to live in a neighborhood enough power, then it will lead to better neighborhoods and better housing and higher quality and a neighborhood that actually works. So read that book. First of all, why WikiHouse? Well, it fits the development that's already going on, i.e., the digitization and the industrialization in the building industry. And there's a couple of reasons that we're doing that. The first one is the productivity in the building industry is pretty appalling. Hasn't changed for a long, long time. And you see, if you compare that to the productivity in the industry or an average productivity in Holland, that they are right down there, that building industry is right down there. If you start to digitize and to industrialize, that productivity can come up. Second, it's safer. Third, it's more transparent, not only in the end product that an end user will get, but also, for example, if it's about pricing, quite often building and developing is quite a black box process. So you've got some kind of idea about what you want. You start to make a design together with an architect and whoever you need to get to a plan that you can realize. And in the end, when it's actually built, that's the moment you will actually know how much it costed you. Well, that's what you want to turn around. You want to make it much more transparent what you will get for how much money with which quality at the day you start developing process. digitization and industrialization helps with that. It will lead to higher quality, and you can just customize it more, so it fits the demand. So there's different ways of industrializing, and there's more than the 5 you see right here, but this is quite an interesting figure, I think. On the left-hand side, you see the off-site volumetric systems, everything prefabbed indoors, high quality because the weather is not a problem, but also it leads to quite high transport costs, and it's not very flexible. You just have to go with whatever the system will give you. Completely on the right hand side, sorry, you can see the 3D printing, which is on site, which happens on site. Right there on site, your house is made, and it's very customizable, etc. And there's a couple of options in between, of which the flat pack is quite a good description of what Wikihouse is about. So it's easy to transport. You make the sub elements in indoors, and then you put them together on site. You don't need a lot of skills to put it together. I said before, if you can put an IKEA cupboard together, you can build a Wiki house. It's a bit black white, but generally that is the case. You don't need a massive factory to put it together, so your starting costs will be very low. But it does need an on-site assembly, so you've got a bit more weather influences, for example. And talking a bit more about that, the cost for setting it up, that's quite important to the actual product you deliver in the end. Because that, if you remember that offsite volumetric system, that needs a massive factory, that needs very high investments up front before you can actually start to produce. And because of that, production and continuous production is key. And because of that, it's quite top down, quite inflexible, but you can deal with big amounts. Wikihouse is the opposite. So you need a CNC mill, CNC machine. They're already there. They're used by furniture makers or whoever wants to play around with a CNC machine. And that's the main investment you will have. And after that, you need a drill to be able to put your different Wikihouse elements together. So that's a very low upfront investment. And because of that, it can be more organic and more bottom up. And so you can facilitate the demand of end users much more. Another reason it's affordable, mainly because it's a self-building system, so you can put it together yourself, which means you don't need a contractor, you don't have to pay laborers, etc. And well, that is needed because there's a big demand for affordable housing. The house you see right now is a new build offered in Almere at the moment for almost 350,000 euros. It's a family house, and completely box standard, nothing special, and built by a contractor. If you compare that to a house that we're building right now in Almere using the Wiki House system, that is a house that is customized. It's built by the future owner and is going to cost around 235,000. So there's about 100,000 difference there. So it's much more the original way we used to develop and build. You will see on the left hand side, an architect would make a design, then you get an engineer involved and you ask them, well, actually, can we build this or not? And then all kinds of solutions come up to make it possible that you can build it. And then you will go to a contractor and you discover that it's actually way too expensive and you start all over again. On the right-hand side, so that's the black box I was talking about. On the right-hand side, we turn that around. So you start with actually engineering a building system. You give it a price, and then based on how many modules you buy, you know what it's going to cost. So it's much more transparent if you do it that way. Here you see costs related to the left hand side example of how we used to develop and build. And because of there's all kinds of risks involved, it means that quite a lot of the money that is actually going to development needs to go to a profit to cover up risks. Goes to fees because every time you're sort of reinventing the wheel and you have to go through a whole engineering phase. The, the the contractor needs to be paid, etc. So quite a lot of the money that is spent on an end product, being the house, is actually not going to the materials that make that house, but the process. And these are figures for the UK, but I assume it's not that different in the rest of the world. So these are all reasons to work with the Wikihouse system. The Wikihouse system answers to those problems. What is it exactly? Well, you can go to an open source community. That's the Wikihouse Foundation website, and from there on, you can get all kinds of information about designs that have already been made. You can download them, potentially adjust them if needed, if you want to, and then send a CNC file to a CNC machine, and parts will be cut out uh, using the CNC machine, and then you can put them together with your friends and family, and then you end up with the skeleton of the Wikihouse skeleton of your house. It's based on it's open source, so you can use all the knowledge that's already available and supplied by others in the world, and um, use it for your own project. So download a design, for example. You use it to produce the elements. You start to put the elements together, and that's how you build the skeleton, the Wikihouse skeleton. Up to here is really Wikihouse. After this, you finish it the way you want to finish it. So cladding, insulation material, installations, it's all up to you. Comes with a manual, bit like the IKEA cupboard manual. So it explains you completely how to build the Wikihouse skeleton. This is a very important step. After you've done your build and you just get all the data, the knowledge, the experience together, and you give it back to the Creative Commons, because that's how the system can become better and better and better. And someone else in the world can use that information to do their own project. So that's a very important step. Now, we wanted to use the Wikihouse system in Almere, and we're doing that sort of in two projects. We did one in 2018, and we built a pioneer's house, which was a show and a test model. So a test model because we wanted to know if it would pass Dutch building regulations, but also a show model to just show to people that it actually leads to a house that works and looks nice and you can live in it, etc. And it looks like a normal house if you wanted to. So those were the sort of two reasons to do this first step. We wanted to test it and show it. Well, that was successful. It passed the Dutch building regulations. So the second part of the project is building 27 wiki houses with self-builders who finance it themselves, design it themselves, develop it themselves, and go and build it themselves. We're using Interreg subsidies, European Union subsidy coming from the European Union to make it all possible. But actually, there's not a lot of that money going to the actual project, but much more to the process around it. You see our self-builders that are building right now in the first phase. The first 9 of the 27 are going up right now. And they started building last July. And just a couple of pictures to show you how it works. These are the foundations. Under this metal frame is a concrete pile, 12 going 12 meters down, because the Almere soil is really soft. It's reclaimed land. Only 50 years old, that land. So you need to go quite deep to be able to have a good foundation. On top of the concrete pile, there's a metal frame, and from that metal frame, you start to work yourself up and actually build the Wiki House. Here you see the elements and the sub-assemblies which are put together indoors, on site, but indoors. Then these are brought to site and put together and insulated. And this is how the Wiki houses are going up. These are all family and members and friends that actually worked on this particular Wiki house. So these are all self-builders, volunteers, family members, people that don't have specific knowledge in building, but they can do it because it's made so simple that anyone can do it. Well, there you go. This is what it looked like about 4 weeks ago. Here you see the timeline. We think the first Wiki house in the first phase will be done. Well, is already done, and that was December, but will actually be connected to utilities in February this month. The last Wiki house in the first phase will be done probably somewhere in May, June, July this year. We've started with the second phase, the design, doing the designs in October. We just applied for planning, and we think we can start the build of the second phase, which is 18 Wiki houses in June, July this year. This is an overview of what it's going to look like. 27 houses in 2 phases. We've got 16 future owners, but also 11 future tenants. So we've got a sort of specific housing association involved that facilitates people that want to self-build but can't finance it. So they will finance it, and then the self-builders will rent the house from this organization. So that's 11 future tenants. The houses are 50 to 90 square meters living space. Total costs in the first phase, so that's land development costs and building costs, reach from 165,000 up to 235,000 euros. If you need a mortgage for that, if you need a mortgage for, let's say, the 165,000, that will give you a monthly cost of around 450, 500 euros. On top of that, you've got the energy bill, but the energy bill is pretty low, so that will be around, let's say, 20, 30 euros. So the cost for housing will be, for that 165,000 euros house, will be around, let's say, 500 euros. On average, the costs for building are around 1,100 euros gross square meter. And that's for a semi-detached house, bathroom, excluding kitchen, excluding bathroom, excluding shed, but energy neutral, and a unique house because it's completely customized. Um, so this is a bit less related to the project, but a bit more about the potential future project and making that possible. We created a toolbox, which is a sort of library of modules with which you can put together, so you can make your own design. And we know that all these modules work, so they're structurally sound. Max span is 4.8 meters. They're all engineered. We've got the CNC files ready for most of them, not all of them, but for the modules that we have used up to now, we've got engineered CNC files. We know what the price is in Holland, of course, and they're all open. They will be open source available. We haven't uploaded them yet, but that will happen. And what our hope is that this sort of toolbox and library is going to grow and grow and grow in the future. And the more it grows, the more flexible uh, we and the Wikihow system can become, and the more varied you can start to design. This is an example what you can do using these modules and using the toolbox. And we actually 3D printed them, and these little modules were actually used in the design phase for the people who are building right now, and that quite worked because you could see what it was going to lead to, not only about if it's about your own house, but also how your own house relates to your neighbors and what might happen with sun and shade. And they were inspiring each other. It's like, oh, that's an interesting solution. I might do that too. So just playing around with that toolbox helps to make a better design, not only for yourself, but also for potential your neighbor or the group. Um, we use the same toolbox to create a VR tool. So you can drag these modules you just saw onto your plot in VR. So you select the location, you select the plot, you put your modules on there. You can put interior walls in, you can put windows and doors in, you can adjust materials for cladding and roof, etc. You can put furniture in, which I think is really important, but because especially for people that don't have design experience, who aren't an architect, the only reference point they have is the furniture that they have already in their house and they can walk around. Um, so that's their reference point. So you need to be able to put that in the design and then actually walk around it in VR to see if your design works or not. And if it doesn't work, you adjust it. So you can walk through the design you've made yourself in a one-to-one experience. Um, the the position of the sun you can adjust, so you can see how it works out with sun. And that's only for Holland, I'm afraid. But the costs change real time. So the moment you put an extra module on your plot, you see the cost rising of the, the development you're doing. We also created a makerspace, which is a container with a CNC machine in it, which can be hired, and we can just track it to wherever the plot is, and you can cut your own files. So this is you can use this makerspace just as a self builder. Now, what we've done in Almere is like sort of hardcore wiki house, because the people that are building there at the moment themselves, they've done everything themselves. So they did the designs, they did the development phase, they got their own finance, and they are building everything themselves. So it's really sort of the hardcore version of Wikihouse, which we wanted to do because we wanted to test that sort of extreme. That doesn't mean that all the projects that might follow have to be that extreme too. And there's sort of two things you could potentially change, and that's one, the amount of work you do yourself and the amount of customization. And if you see them as two, um, an X and a Y, you can sort of imagine a sort of palette of options you might have playing with those two factors. So you can imagine a design that's completely not customizable, but because of that, really affordable, and you do that yourself, you build it all yourself, then you end up at the really affordable side of the Wikihouse options you have. If you make a new design and you don't build it yourself, but you get some handyman in that do it for you, then of course you end up at the more expensive side of using the Wikihouse system. So there's a range of options in between, and the two criteria are the amount of customization and the amount of what you do yourself. Well, this is what I wanted to share with you guys about what we're doing and about the Wikihouse system and about the future of the Wikihouse system in Holland and potentially wider in the world. And yeah, let me know if there are any questions. And I think Bronwyn might do a bit of moderation of questions. Bronwyn.
Hey guys, yes. All right, let me start with some questions. Okay, so tell us about the Wikihouse Toolbox. Is it available? How do we, if I wanted to build a Wikihouse, what would the process be for me?
It's not available yet because still we're using it at the for the project that we're doing right now in Almere. But it will be available not too far from now, and we'll share that toolbox, including the data that comes with it. So, for example, the CNC files. And the idea is that you put those modules together, and by doing that, you can make your own volume, your own mass, let's say, and then fill it in. For example, with the VR tool, the way you want to fill it in. So yeah, that's how it will work.
Yeah, I noticed that your website, the current Wikihouse website says that, wait for the new version to come out. So I guess this is gonna maybe include some of the exciting things that you guys were talking about today with the different modules and so on. That's great.
Definitely. But just to give you some background, we're really busy at the moment to get that project of 27 houses to get it built. So the focus is there at the moment, and the moment we've got a bit more time to then we'll start to share more. But yeah, if you just check website, social media, then and you will know when it is online.
And there are different places where you can find Wikihouse designs and data. So I think you talked about the UK Wikihouse site that announced a new system. That's another system than what we used. So I think, and it's also we local developed a Wikihouse system. So we just took one of the old versions and said, well, we want to make it better and change it, and it changed to a new system. It's called Swift, by the way, and maybe for the people who know Wikihouse a bit are listening now. In the Netherlands, we have also a website, so there you will find it, the links to that system when we are finished with the project. So we cannot share it now because the project is going on. So that's a bit of the thing with why it's not shared yet. But we will.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to stick with that line of questioning right now. So I've got one from Kaylin Cameron here. Will there be line drawing details available with the toolbox? It would be nice to understand the detailing of the assembly and how it works with other systems like insulation, cladding, interior wall finishes, structural wall depths, etc.
That's a very interesting question, because that's for every building different. So that's what Ivar did say in his presentation. Till the skeleton or the chassis of the Wiki House, that's where Wiki House is the open source part and what we share. All the other things, it's really depending on your location and on your own regulations of your location. So like how you put the cladding on, well, that's maybe one of the most common things. That's the same everywhere, but what kind of insulation you need or installations is different everywhere. I mean, we have a different climate than in Canada, so that's very difficult to say, but we will share all our details we have. So that's for sure. And you can use it, maybe not, but or yeah, improve it for your own site or local part.
Yeah, exactly. That's really great that it's customizable and you can adapt it to anywhere in the world, it sounds like. So I might go to another sort of question that's a little bit local for us Canadians here. Is the dew point and ventilation considered in the design?
Yes. You might have seen in one of the pictures, there's a vapor barrier on the inside of the Wikihouse module. So that's a plastic layer that keeps moisture out, prevents moisture going from the inside of the house through the Wikihouse skeleton outside. That's not what you want, because we've done quite extensive research actually if we could leave that barrier out. And for the Dutch case, so for projects that you might want to do in Holland, that is on the edge with moisture building up in the future. And it might be all right and maybe not, and we just didn't want to take the risk. So there is a vapor barrier on the inside that blocks it completely. And on the outside, there's a sort of membrane. So moisture that gets in the structure, can get out. So yeah, that's how it's built up, and that's how we have to do it in Holland, at least with the climate we have, to prevent any damage in the future.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So how about the authorities having jurisdiction? Have you had any difficulties with them? You guys mentioned that you had everything checked by structural engineers. Do the authorities require that another structural engineer stamps the drawings or anything like that? And maybe we'll start with that question.
Yeah, cool. Well, we've been to the lab with the Wikihouse system, where sort of the floor panels were actually cracked by a machine to see how strong it is. And we had to do that to show to the people that check building regulations that it is actually strong enough. But that meant quite an extensive bit of R&D that we had to do up front to showcase like it is strong enough. But by doing that, it means that any project in Holland now can showcase their people that check building regulations. Yes, it is strong enough. They use the same report. And actually that report is going around the world at the moment because there's quite a lot of data in there that tells you how strong it is. And then it's a bit the same with what we just talked about. And still, you have to reflect the local building regulations, those local building regulations. But we do have the data, and they are available to anyone who wants them.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I imagine that, you know, if we wanted to build a wiki house, we would probably have to, you know, prove to the authorities from the beginning that.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully you can just use that report and tell them, like, okay, you see, strong enough. But it might be the case that you have to do extra R&D.
If the Euro code is okay in Canada, then it might be possible. I don't know if it's comparable in.
I don't know how comparable it is either. Okay, let's stay on the structural side here. The 4.8 minimum span that was mentioned about halfway through the lecture during the modules, what does that distance define exactly?
It's not a minimum span, it's the max span. So it defines the max space from wall to wall, from one outside wall to the other outside wall. And originally in a REN system, so the system before Swift, the Wikihow system before Swift was REN, that had a span of, I thought it was 3.2, but a max 3.6. But with a max span of 3.6, you can't make a good floor plan. So the first thing we did is stretching that max span up to 4.8 and test that, and that it works, which means you can make better floor plans.
Yeah, at least in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, let's talk about building code a little bit more and fire resistance. So what about the fire resistance of the elements? The systems seem to be made out of plywood, fast burning, not standard wood lumber.
True, it is plywood we use. About the fire resistance, we we add plasterboard. So this plywood is never in contact with fire directly. So from the inside with plasterboard, you can make it fire resistant. And on the outside, you can do the same if you want. So it's, yeah. I mean, wood is wood, so it's always kind of danger for fire, but it takes a while. So,
and I mean, there's quite strict building regulations if it's about fire safety, and it fits all those regulations, which meant plasterboard on the inside, and on the outside. We're not putting plasterboard on the outside, of course, but on the outside. It's just that the barrier and battens, and from battens you put your cladding on, and that's enough.
But it is
in our case.
Yeah, it is possible to use. You have the special fire-resistant board for the outside. Sometimes it's required, but in our project it is not required now. So we depends on the local circumstances.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on the local circumstances and codes. So yeah, that's understandable. Okay, I'm gonna switch to a question now about foundations. So you mentioned deep concrete piles for the current project under construction. Who designed the foundation, and did you hire a geotechnical engineer? Yeah, we'll stop there for now.
We got a contractor who did that. So the Wiki House itself is completely built by self-builders, but what's under the Wiki House is done by a contractor. Because, like I said, especially in Almere, you need to bash down concrete piles 12 meters. You need massive machines, etc. So there's no way a self-builder can do that himself. So for that, we got a contractor who dealt with that. And
that's one of the things that's typical for the Netherlands. foundation, because in a lot of countries you have a better soil, a better, you can even just do with screw piles, or even without piles sometimes, just some concrete slabs in the ground. But in the Netherlands you need piles, so and it's difficult to do it yourself. And we hired also a structural engineer to calculate the foundation. Also the wind
Probably
power to connect it.
Probably a good thing to mention is that it's much lighter, so there's less weight to deal with, which generally means that your foundations can be less heavy too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. What are the effective RSI values of the typical Wiki House exterior walls and roof assemblies, and are they customizable?
Maybe just correct me if I'm wrong, Vincent, but I'll try to answer this. So we work with RC values. So that's the R values of all the materials from inside wall to the outside wall put together, and then you get an RC value. And that is around 7 for the houses that we're building right now. And yes, you can play with that the moment you put insulation material in that's just has a higher R value. We used, in the show model, we used a natural wool, and in the houses that are being built right now, it's more, oh gosh, I don't know the English word for that, but it's less natural.
Yeah,
but a bit more a rock wool, I think it is.
Yeah.
But a bit more affordable, because, and that's what is has been a constant balance finding in this project. One, you want to be sustainable and use bio-based materials if you can, and but generally they are a bit more expensive, and we're also trying to realize houses that are actually affordable. And insulation material is one of those subjects where, yeah, it depends on the end user and how big the wall it is, and their ideals.
And it's your own choice.
Yeah.
But I think about the question if it's also modular, and that's a good question, because that's, well, actually it is. I think the traditional modular building systems are based on a 30 centimeter modular size, and you can use that on the Wiki House as well. But it's not, the cladding is not, for example, special made for Wiki House. We use wooden cladding, so you can change it yourself on site. So that's the good thing about wood. Easy to assemble, but also easy to adjust.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to go to a question about costs. So have you done any cost comparison of the Wikihouse structural system with conventional framing practices?
Yes, and a very rough thumb of rule is, assuming you build it yourself, you can customize it as much as you want, but it leads to competitive price if you compare it to building systems that are completely produced indoors. So in a way, you could say that because you're self-building, you make the customizing possible without paying more. You see what I mean? So I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
A little
So
more, that would be great.
Generally, the more you customize, the more you pay, the more it costs. But Wikihouse and the Wikihouse system makes it possible that you can customize a lot. You can make it completely your own. So you would think that that leads to higher costs, but because it's a self-building system, that actually leads to costs that are comparable to completely standardized building systems. But that's based on the fact that you build yourself. If you start to get it done by handyman or even contractors or whatever, then you will pay more. Then you pay for the fact that you customize.
Yeah, then it's comparable to the other more traditional wooden building systems.
Yeah.
If you let it done, if you hire contractors, then you pay more or less the same. So the good thing about Wikihouse is that you can do it yourself easy without having the knowledge of building structures. And that makes it way cheaper.
Exactly. So the money you save is from not having contractors. That makes sense. Yeah. So you could, if you wanted to compare it to like Northern Canada, for example, we could figure out the cost of materials, less the cost of the contractor. And then, that would probably give you an idea of how much it would cost here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's great. Thank you. So what materials go into the CNC machine?
Plywood, 18 mil plywood.
18 mil plywood. Great. Well, that answers another question as well. So awesome. So let me just see here. Okay, so would this work for marine application? There's someone here that wants to build houseboats. And which wiki would you recommend?
Sorry, I had you froze a bit, so I didn't get the question.
Okay, this is a question from someone that's looking at building houseboats, and they're asking if you think it would work for marine applications, and which wiki would you recommend?
Oof. Oh wow. I'm not sure I can answer that question. Vincent?
Yeah. Well, I last years I got a lot more questions. Also, can I build a Wikihouse system on wheels, for example, or make a building a tiny house? I think it's all possible. Also on a houseboat. I mean, you need a floating platform. You can't make that out of a Wikihouse system, but well, maybe you can, but I don't know how. But that's up to you, especially the one who is asking the question. If you want to make the first Wiki houseboat, that would be fantastic, I think. But use all the information that you can find and start with doing the research in Wikihouse. For example, the RAN system, I think you can find the most about that. And start from there. Or when we are sharing our files, we shared the files of the Pioneers house that Ivar talked about. So you can also use that and change it to your own, what you want.
Great. I think that leads me to a next question about open source files. So what did you mean exactly by it's open source, and are these files available anywhere?
So yes, it is open source, so it's available to anyone who wants to use them. As Vincent just said, the files that we used for the Pioneers house, they are available. Maybe Vincent, you could maybe we could even share a link. I don't know if it's possible to those files. The files for the 27 houses that we are building right now or are developing right now, they aren't there yet. But the moment we have them and we have the time to put them online, we will. So they will definitely be open source and available to anyone.
That's incredible, you guys. That's so generous. So I'll go back to a question about plywood. So, and I saw on one of the websites that you can use OSB as well, right?
Vincent has a bit of experience with that. Maybe you could.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find the link for the download.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's no problem. I can answer the question. Yes, and we used OSB before. The advantage of this material, it's way cheaper than the plywood we use. I mean, the plywood you cannot use all the plywood, so you need some specific types of plywood that has some specific details that you need for making a structure. But with OSB, the disadvantages we did find out is it's way harder to cut with the CNC machine, and it breaks easier. It is strong, but if you have to assemble the parts together, it is possible that some small parts will break from the sheets. So yeah, we thought it was not very pleasant to work with. Plywood is more, yeah, I don't know if the correct English word, but more elastic.
More
So,
giving.
yeah, it gives in more, and that's very good to work with, and it brings together the parts also more precisely. So.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And someone has asked about the type of plywood. So I assume thinner layers like Baltic birch ply. And basically, can we use the standard North American 3/4 inch ply in the CNC process?
I don't know the detailed information about this sheet, so.
But what we could do, or might already have done with the Pioneer's house, there's a precise code that will tell you how strong that type of ply is that you buy at the shop. And so and that code is already shared, or we can share. So you know the minimum strength of the ply. So that, and I think that's an international code that applies everywhere.
Yeah, the file of the structural engineer is in the download part, so there you can check it out. Try to find it somewhere because it's some big reports.
That's awesome. Thanks, guys. So I think I've got through most of them, but I want to finish with a nice question here. How do you see the relationships in the industry changing, i.e. between architects, developers, contractors, and clients?
Well, so there's two ways I can answer this question. One, what I actually see, or what I would like to see. And generally, I think what I see is that still clients and end users are not really in power if it's about building and buying a place that they want, and that it will be built in the way they actually want it. And it's still quite a lot of black box, or just have it this way, or I'm not going to do it for you. Whereas what would be much better, I think, if we move from a sort of contractors model, where the contractor offers you what he wants to offer, and he takes all the risks upon him, but you will also pay for that. Where we move to a system that's much more suppliers based. So you make sure that you bring together what you need to build a house. So you bring together the different suppliers. You bring it together via a platform, for example, and you use that so you're able to order your house via that platform. And that's much more transparent and much more empowering to the end users of the house. So if you ask me in which way it should go, then it should add to that much more supplier-based system where the customer is much more in power. That would be the dream.
Yes, that would be absolutely wonderful. That would really empower people again. And I think, you know, take us back in time to, yeah, when we could build our own houses. That would be really, really cool. So I think I've got through all these questions. So I just want to thank you both for your time. This is such an incredible initiative you guys are doing, and doing it as an open source sharing, file sharing kind of a way is, yeah, incredible. So I think we wish you all the best. And it sounds like, you know, we'd need a Canadian pioneer to take this up and check if it meets our building codes and go through all that kind of rigmarole. But hopefully someone on this call is going to take that initiative. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to the presenters and Ben for organizing this all.